Good evening, hello and welcome to Debrief. I'm Anusha, Soni. The battle against COVID-19 has been a long and an intense one. With vaccinations picking up pace, there is much hope that the third wave will not be as deadly as the second one. Schools are reopening. Most states are ensuring that schools follow COVID-19 protocols and vaccination of staff and teachers is done on priority. The key question that looms in everyone's mind is whether it's worth taking the risk. There are various reports, including one by the National Institute of Disaster Management, which puts out the warning that children will be more susceptible and vulnerable in the inevitable third wave. In the next 30 minutes, we'll look at different aspects of the story. What are the experts saying? What is it that the government has to say? How is it that we can make learning a safer experience for our children during this pandemic? Here's a special report. The worst fear, as I said, is that as we prepare for the third wave, is that children might be adversely affected, more vulnerable in the deadly virus. In the first two waves, children have been relatively safer, with rare cases of hospitalization or even requiring any kind of oxygen support. With abundant caution, schools are gradually reopening across the country. There is fear, apprehension, and in some corners even cheer. The joy of learning in a classroom, to meet your friends and to enjoy the best phase of your life. The daunting question on everyone's mind, is it safe to send kids back to the school? Here is a special report.
Is it the right time to reopen schools? This is the question on everyone's mind. Various states around the country have already reopened schools. Others, like Delhi, are set to reopen theirs from the 1st of September. It's a catch-22 situation. While the children have missed the experience and joy of learning in a classroom, the apprehensions of parents are not unfounded. While states like Delhi have given an option to children between online and classroom learning, the Telangana High Court has intervened, asking all government and private schools to give an option to the students if they wish to continue studying in the online mode.
The High Court passed this order after taking into consideration the fact that all children below the age of 18 have not been vaccinated, number one. Number two, High Court has also taken into account the fact that children can be asymptomatic and they can be carriers of the virus and they can come home and pass that virus on to their parents or grandparents.
In Delhi, the preparation for gradual reopening of schools is in full swing.
दिल्ली में स्कूल, कॉलेज, कोचिंग एक्टिविटीज शुरू की जाएं।
Delhi Education Minister Manish Sisodia has clarified that all SOPs shall be followed and children won't be forced to attend schools. While some are happy with the schools reopening, there are others who are still apprehensive.
They need a physical approach now. They need to be there. This is going to be the new normal, as you say. And we should even, give confidence to our children that please go ahead. We have to fight corona from here now.
I believe that till the time the government comes up with a concrete plan of vaccinating students under the age of 18, the schools should continue with the online mode of education.
The brief experience of states like Punjab, Bihar and Karnataka is also crucial. After Punjab opened schools in early August, the state mandated regular testing of staff and students. In states like Bihar and Karnataka, the positivity rate remains almost unaffected. Even Karnataka is testing the teaching staff and students aggressively.
Totally we have tested 6,472 children. Out of that, only 14 children has been tested positive. That figure shows that the positivity rate among the students are very less.
While most experts have called for reopening of schools, especially in rural areas, with a vaccine for children already approved, the hope is that in the next few months, at least the vulnerable population will be inoculated. Bureau Report, CNN News 18.
Well, here's talking about the state of Maharashtra. It was one of the first states to constitute a special task force focusing on pediatric services. Recently, many clusters have been reported where children have been found to be infected. How are the authorities preparing? What is the situation on the ground? My colleague Mihir with this special report.
After being the epicenter of COVID-19 in the first two waves of the pandemic, Maharashtra is treading carefully as it prepares for the inevitable third wave. Mumbai's municipal corporation, the BMC, sealed an orphanage in Baikola on 24th August, where 16 children tested positive during a fever camp. By the end of the month, 18 children at Mankhurd Children's Home and 14 children of Ulhasnagar Children's Home tested positive. The news might have grabbed headlines, but pediatric experts believe there is no reason to panic.
I don't think one has to be worried. This is more like an epidemic in that an outbreak that has happened. And if you actually note, many of them are asymptomatic or very mildly symptomatic. And just because they were tested, they came positive. Otherwise, they didn't have any symptoms.
In a boarding school or in an orphanage where the facilities are shared by many children together, like sleeping, eating and staying together, there is more likelihood that the virus will get transmitted from one person to the other. Now, these children who are already non-vaccinated, they are more prone for the infection with COVID-19, and we necessarily have to see to it that the people who are helping these children need to be always vaccinated, and they also have to be behaving in a very COVID-appropriate behavior.
The BMC conducted a sero survey in June focusing on the pediatric population of Mumbai, which revealed over 50% of children in Mumbai have developed antibodies against the COVID virus. The study holds true for several places across the state.
The children with comorbidity, when they have additional illness, something like cancer or kidney diseases or heart diseases, when they are positive, they have been a little severe this. But otherwise, most of the others have been almost similar in the first and the second wave. So I don't think the second wave was more severe than the first.
The Maharashtra state government is ensuring that they take on all safety measures before they reopen schools for children.
We are ensuring and have instructed authorities to ensure all those visiting education institutes should be vaccinated by 5th September. They can initiate special drive if needed. Based on consultation with task force and guidance of our CM, we will take a call on reopening.
A vaccine jab for our pediatric population will ensure total protection before they head back to their classrooms is what many believe. However, children have been better in tackling the COVID infection as compared to adults. With low positivity rate, they have braved 2 COVID waves without much trouble. While many of them remain asymptomatic, severity of infection is seen among those with comorbidities. In Mumbai with video journalist Jayant Kad, this is Mihir Trivedi.
Now, the shutdown of schools is not just about the mode of education. For a country like India, shutdown of schools meant children depending on midday meals deprived of their nutrition. It also meant that with declining incomes, more children would be pushed into child labour. Experts fear that there may be a further spurt in the number of cases of child marriage and even child trafficking. Not everyone in this country is privileged to have multiple smartphones and gadgets to study online. Neither are families able to afford it due to lockdowns and unemployment. When the pandemic led to shutdown of schools, it hit us hard as a society, and the path to recovery is a long one. A special report exploring the social implications when the classroom education was disrupted.
Since March last year, as coronavirus raged, schools have remained shut for about 17 months, affecting lives of millions of children in India. But with the pandemic receding slowly, schools are reopening gradually in a phased manner. The impact of schools shutting down has been disastrous, especially for the rural parts of the country. Experts are unanimous: with all precautions, schools must reopen. UNICEF argues that there are very few cases of children with severe COVID-19.
The impact of children being out of school is, I believe, far, far greater than the impact of some children getting the infection, the risks that schools will become the places which will drive transmission has not been borne out by studies. And moreover, we know now how to make it as safe as possible.
In a country where education is the key to bridge class divide, the pandemic has only deepened the chasm. The learning experience for children in rural areas and amongst the urban poor was starkly different from affluent or middle-class families. The digital divide was stark. This also led to a situation where many children dropped out of school, some pushed into child labor, and even early marriages. Experts argue that the pandemic can lead to increased cases of child trafficking. A recent study from a relatively affluent state like Haryana showed about 2.5 lakh students may have dropped out of private schools in the current academic year. The international reports show a grim picture. A joint report by ILO and UNICEF said that the pandemic could have pushed over 9 million children globally into child labor. School closures have badly hit the girl child, especially in rural India. Out of school, no midday meals, worsening financial conditions meant several parents marrying off their girl child at a very young age. For instance, in Telangana alone, over 1,300 cases of child marriage were reportedly averted between the period of April 2020 to March 2021. That's an increase of 27%. Clearly, the pandemic has pushed more and more people into poverty, and children are the most vulnerable and adversely affected. Bureau Report, CNN News 18. Well, joining us on the broadcast are our special guests, Mr. B.C. Nagesh. He is the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education from the state of Karnataka. Dr. Rajesh Parekh, who is the Director of Medical Research at the Jaslok Hospital and Research Center in Mumbai, is also joining us on the broadcast. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Nagesh, I'm coming to you first and taking in a view from you. The state government of Karnataka has been abundantly cautious when it comes to reopening of the schools. When it comes to your experience concerning, say, between class 9 to 12, where the schools are already opened in certain districts, how has the experience been so far? What are the learnings?
It's a very good experience. As you said, people were unable to access to the online classes because of different reasons at the rural sites, and also a family whose financial conditions are very not good. After we opened our class up on 23rd, that particularly 9, 10, 11, 12, taking all opinion from our experts, educational experts, and from the doctors, we started it, and we thought that the attendance may not be to our expectation, but now after seeing that, we have even today, we had an attendance of 65.83% in the classes. Particularly in the rural areas, many schools have an attendance of more than 100%. And I have visited more than 30-35 schools. Even our expectation was, in the urban was different. We had thought that people who are able to access online classes may not attend the classes, but the reality is entirely different. Okay. Even those from a very good background says that we are unable to concentrate on the online classes because continuously we cannot sit before the mobile, laptop, or etc., and we have not missed. We doesn't have any interaction with our teachers, which is most important for us. And we have not seen. We were discussing with the friends. Whichever the doubts which we get when we are listening to the classes, but all such things was missing. And by seeing the attendance, students prefer offline classes, and they are very happy. And many Hello,
And as you're pointing out, sir, that the response so far has been very encouraging. I want to take all those points to Dr. Parikh as well, who's with us on the broadcast. Dr. Parikh, you just heard the Karnataka Education Minister, the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education in the state, and he's saying that the response has been very heartening. We were actually apprehensive that whether the kids would come to the school or not. They are actually coming in huge numbers. Would you agree with the timing at which we are opening schools right now? What's your assessment?
Well, first of all, let me disclose that my opinion will be through the perspective of a neuropsychiatrist and a medical researcher for whom human life is sacrosanct and nothing whatsoever, not even education, can take precedence over human health and child survival. Having said that, I would just, as by way of preamble, point out that in the epidemic or the pandemic of 100 years ago of Spanish flu, children were hit badly in one of the waves. And if we look at what is happening in the current pandemic, because as you're aware, I have been documenting it from January of 2020, long before there were any cases in India. We've written 2 national bestsellers on the pandemic. And in the current pandemic, if we see, regarding schools, I'm restricting myself to that.
Yes.
Israel had to close its school after opening them because 100% of cases were traced to the schools. This was in last summer.
Okay.
South Korea had to defer the opening of schools 5 times. In the United States, and these being matters which are decided by the state and not the central government, states have repeatedly opened and closed schools because of children falling ill. In fact, more children are falling ill in the United States with COVID-19 and serious COVID-19, mind, than at any other time in the pandemic.
So, Dr. Parikh, I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but the crux of what you're saying is that this is not the right time. Would that be correct to conclude?
I think that's a reasonable conclusion, though I would have preferred to justify it with a few caveats, but I understand we're short of time.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, I'll just I have another 1 minute to go. I'm coming to Mr. Nagesh. Sir, you just heard what Dr. Parikh had to say. He's pointing out to various global situations in countries like Israel, South Korea, US, even in the Spanish flu. 100 years ago, the experience was that in one of the waves, children would be adversely affected. With that experience in mind, do you still think this is the right time? And what are the key precautions you are taking as the state government?
You know that we have an expert committee in Karnataka. There are many pediatricians even in that. And according to them, the children will be less affected. And the infection rate, even now we have tested 6,472 students. Out of them, 14 tested positive. And taking all precautionary measures, whatever the expert have said, SOP has been done to the opening of the school and it will be maintained strictly.
Okay.
And wherever the student population is more, we have advised them to take only 50% today, 1 day off, and other day another 50%.
Mr. B.C. Nagesh, I really hope that with all these precautions, children can have a safe experience of learning. Dr. Rajesh Parikh is also telling us about the historical experience and what globally we have seen the situation. Clearly, children are the most important national asset for any country, and that remains true for India as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. We'll continue this discussion, this debate. There are more nuances we talk about on the other side of a quick break. Welcome back. The Subject Expert Committee of Central Drug Standard Control Organization recommended an emergency use authorization for Zydus Cadilla's 3-dose COVID-19 vaccine, Zycovir. This vaccine can be administered to adolescents as well. There's much hope that in the next few months, the vaccine will be made available to the vulnerable children, in particular, the age group which qualifies for it. Here's a special report about the government vaccination plan for children and how are the state governments looking at it.
I am a student of class 12th and I believe that schools should not reopen until the students get fully vaccinated. The opening of educational institutions poses a great risk to students, teachers, other staff members and even the public.
We have been cooped up in our houses for so long and it's tedious and exhausting, and COVID has become one of those things that everyone agrees on that it's horrible.
With schools in many states reopening slowly, opinions on when it's the right time to send kids back to school or should we wait till they are vaccinated are sharply divided. But where are the vaccines and when will they be available? With the Government of India approving the first COVID vaccine for children above 12 years of age on the 20th of August, we look to get you some answers.
We are gearing up, but we're still a long way away from having good facilities because we don't have enough doctors who know pediatrics. We don't have enough ICUs for children. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have all this. We are preparing for it.
The first vaccine for adolescents in India is expected to be Zycov-D. The National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization is in discussions to outline a roadmap for the introduction of the DNA-based Zydus Cadila vaccine in the general population. As per sources, the panel is soon expected to prioritize beneficiaries in age groups of 12 to 18. The next candidate is Bharat Biotech's pediatric dose. Last week, the company presented interim safety data to the CDSCO4. As per sources, Bharat Biotech will submit the final data by the end of September. Hopefully, the results will be promising. And finally, there is the Covovax vaccine for children, which will be launched in the first quarter of next year, most likely in January-February, as per Serum Institute's Adar Poonawalla. As per sources, the vaccination program will be introduced in the coming 4 to 5 weeks. But there are more than 12 crore adolescents in India in the 12 to 18-year age bracket, and around 1% of them are susceptible to severe COVID-19 infections, which means that there are still 12 lakh people which are at risk. This will be a race against time. With Runjan Sharma, Ritanshu Bhattacharya for CNN News 18.
Well, in a country like India with a huge digital divide, classroom education has to resume. Children depend on schools for midday meals to keep them out of child labour, hoping to build a better future. We hope that the precautions by the government continue consistently so that children can continue to get their education in classrooms. He is hoping that children remain safe in the third wave of COVID-19. Thank you for watching this site.